Well, hey, everybody. It is the once famed Pacific Ocean, Asia, coming to you live on a Thursday, almost Friday, almost into the week, with a week vacation coming up. I cannot contain my heartfelt joy. I love my job, but I like to get away from my coworkers too. It's for mental sanity. Yesterday, I had the privilege. Wednesdays, when it's my turn to drive 3 days a week for Ballarat, Wednesdays we do what's called a web program with third graders. We don't take them to Ballarat, we take them up to the foothills. That's why you saw the photo I posted yesterday. I took the picture from an overlook at Lookout Mountain. We also went to Buffalo Bill's grave. That's Mr. Cody, who started out killing the buffalo, hired by the U.S. government, the Army, to wipe out the buffalo so that they could put a dent in the Indian populace. And he had a change of mind, and he started doing a circus, which he and his wife, they're both buried there up in Lookout Mountain. There's a dispute, or people tried to manufacture dispute. They wanted to steal his body and bury him in Cody, Wyoming, which was named after Buffalo Bill's real name. But in his later years, he changed that and said, I want to be on the mountain overlooking Denver. So that is the photo I took. And if you enlarge the photo, you can see downtown the skyscrapers in the distance. I watched these third graders. I take up 2 classes, one in the morning, one in the afternoon. First class goes up, they do a nature hike, we drive up, the teacher's telling them stuff. And I'm going to tell you that as the years have gone by, Michael has learned a lot about himself, about the world around him, and public education. And I asked the question, is public education really working? And the answer is yes and no. It worked in that it has undermined the anchors, foundation stones, and values once held dear by many in this nation. In the 1950s, the public education was overran with ex-communists fleeing Russia that came over here and took advantage of our beautiful liberties and became professors, injecting Marxism and Stalinism and all their crapola, and they just packaged it frog and kettle style, where a bunch of unsuspecting pubescent youth who's drinking and partying all the time just sat in class and said, yeah, that's where it's at. We had a revival of the 1960s public education style. And if you look at the millennials today, they're not wearing bras, they're not shaving their pits, they've got BO, they've got gauges, the tattoos. Is it that far off from what they did in the 60s? They had BO, they didn't shave their armpits, they wore no bras, and they espoused much of the same philosophy. The millennials are nothing new. The millennials think they're where it's at. They're smarting off to the entire culture at large, not all millennials, but most. And you have to stop and go, so what the hell is going on? So I watched these third graders, and I watched the teacher. Nothing against him. His job is to teach him about pine cones and trees, and pulls the needles off and breaks them, and you can suck on the ends, and it's bitter, and the Indians used to make tea out of them. Now, I'm going to tell you something. I watched those third graders intently because I walked on both hikes with both classes because the teacher said, oh, aren't you going to come with us? I thought, okay. And I watched the kids. They're from a school where these kids are just confined to the city, mostly Hispanic. And as they're walking up, and the guy would stop and say, okay, I'm not going to talk over you. I'll wait till you guys show some respect. And I'm watching these kids have a very hard time in third grade to pay full-on attention. Now, third grade is third grade. They're kicking stuff. They pick up a pine cone and toss it. And he's jumping on them. Now, we're not going to toss pine cones. Should we be doing that? Should we be pulling the weed and the plants out of the ground? And I'm sitting here thinking, what's wrong with this picture? And then we stop for 5 minutes. And he's scolding them. Not yelling. Okay, we'll just stand here until you're done, and then I can tell you what we need to tell you. And I'm thinking, these kids are not interested in this. Now, they were interested in Buffalo Bill. They did listen to that. And even one of the kids asked me, How did Buffalo Bill die? I said, natural causes. He and his wife are both buried here. How come they're buried together? I said, many men and their wives wanted to be buried together when they died. And Michael was in the public education system. I was hyper. I was hands-on. I was fascinated with trucks and cement mixers and dump trucks and road graders. And I just saw tractors and I just went, wow. Trucks were my porn back when I was a kid. Seeing big giant clamshell cranes and diggers, and I just went nuts when I saw orange construction equipment. I didn't get into ships until it was later, but when I went to school, and to have a teacher who was standing there in his plaid shirt and would lift up his arms with sweat, spit stains, and I'm sitting there going, and what is the value of this that I have to hear today as I'm toying and fingering a little tiny Matchbox vehicle and Cook of the House by Paul McCartney at the Sound of Wings is going through my head. Honestly, most of what I learned as a kid had no value to me whatsoever, because it was what was modeled to me that was caught, not what was spoken out of the mouth. We always think that people are taught by what is verbalized, and we are taught more by the prevailing influences around us. Case in point, the attention span of today's people in general, adults and children, is on the decline. They cannot sit down and read a book. They cannot sit down and focus. And if you look at women in cars and men in cars, they're not paying attention to their driving. And this is a pet peeve of mine because it is utterly selfish. When you get in your car, ladies and men, you need to drive. Put your phone away. Do it when you're parked, stopped, off the road. But people won't. They think that whatever's on that phone of theirs is so important. Because of the phone, the tablet, social media, video games, TV, that has become the educators of our day. And what is happening is I'm seeing, I don't know if anybody else is seeing it, and I say that meaning the educators themselves. They have taught these kids to be pro-socialist, pro-global warming advocates, save the animals. And it's interesting at the same time that these kids who have great respect more for animals are having less respect for other people, adults, the aged, senior citizens, their parents, the police, the educators themselves. And I told people years ago, if we continue to teach children that there is no God, and we continue to teach them there's no absolutes, but then we turn it around and tell them that global warming is an absolute fact and evolution is an absolute fact and Donald Trump is the most hideous form of evil as an absolute fact, and Hillary Clinton, it's too bad she lost because she would have brought us a utopic world. The kids do start to believe that stuff, but there is a spin-off that comes from that that's the biggest kick in the arse. These same kids will suddenly realize if all of this is true, then what is the point of me sitting in this classroom learning this boring stuff? We want to talk about a male and a female pine cone, and I'm not supposed to pick them up and throw them, but there's tens of thousands of them laying on the ground under a grove of ponderosa pine trees, and I'm thinking if I was a kid, I'd be picking them up and kicking them and throwing them too. And the teachers tell them it's disrespectful to the environment. Now, I grew up in beautiful forest, and there were things I did that were not always cool. I would just go to cut down a tree because I wanted to and watch it fall. Dumb stuff. But as I've gotten older, I have an appreciation for the environment, and scolding the children and telling them, now we must be quiet, we must not stop scuffling your feet. And then he would tell the kids to do an experiment that we're going to hear silence, which I thought was a great idea. It was hard for those kids to get quiet. But when they finally did, I'm standing there with 27 kids and I'm going, wow, they're doing it. Kids are kids. And education squeezes them into this mold, and it's like, you can educate, but you have to take into mind that these are kids, they're in the inner city. Why wouldn't they pick up the pine cones and toss them? It's fun. Michael looks at life a little different. They're pulling dried grasses and weeds. It's fall. I'm thinking, no harm in that. They walk by and go, I just saw you pick that. You picked that. You just killed it. It looks like it's dead, but it's not dead. And I'm thinking, it is. It's a weed. But I wasn't going to argue with the teacher, and I'm just sitting there going, what are these kids learning through all this? I'm going to tell you that the kids, more and more, are starting to see education as valueless, as unnecessary. More and more kids are saying, F it, I'm not going to school today. Why do you suppose that is? Who wants to sit down and be told this earth is billions and billions of years old and this rock was formed by whatever the evolutionists come up with? I don't know how you can hold anybody's attention to that. That is boring. That is dry. That's like talking about how a brick is made. I don't care what educators say. There is some stuff that is boring and it is dry as rice cakes. That being said, I still have a firm belief that when you teach people that God intimately created this universe in 6 days, and when God did it, he was clearly enjoying himself, and he saw all that he made and saw that it was good, that is a lot more hopeful than what the current public education system is doing today. Because kids are taking what they've been taught in the classroom and taking it to the end game. Okay, there's no God. There's no absolutes. Why do I need you to educate me? I'm watching my son, not in contact with him, but through the messages I get every month. He's working at a rental car, detailing, and they are now grooming him for management. I'm going, I wonder if they're going to say you must get your GED. But then it hit me. There's a good possibility they could care less. What does a GED have to do with managing a car dealership or a car rental car? And it suddenly dawned on me, you really don't need a degree. That we used to, in America, everything was an apprentice. Everything was trained, skilled crafts, trained. I talked to a woman, a very good-looking Hispanic woman who can carry her own. She's a security officer down at West, and I find her attractive and interesting. The other day I was doing my walk around the school campus while I had parked my bus. I do 1 or 2 laps around the school to get my walk in, and she goes, hey, how are you? And we talked about stuff, and she goes, I've got a degree in criminal justice, and I can't get a job. She goes, I want to do booking. I said, why? Criminal justice is job security, especially in Denver. She goes, I know, huh? She told me they won't hire her because she has no experience. Now, come on, folks, laugh with me. Isn't America a dumb game system? You don't have a degree, so you can't get the job. Then you get the degree, you can't get the job because you have no experience. It's like, how do you get the experience when you just came out of college? Dumbass. This is the stupidity. Have you ever read instructions on how to put crap together, toys, wagons? And you look at the diagram, the diorama, you look at everything, and you go, where's this part? It was never in the bag. I tell you that so many times I look at legalese and the way things are written. Like, have you read this crap? Does that make any sense to you? I really believe that there are actual corporate buffoons out there that just sit there and laugh like that cheesy, that one little part in the Brady Bunch canned laughter. Somebody's in the corporate office doing that every day. They're going, watch this. Then they're writing up this dumb stuff. We're going to insert parts in here that don't even exist and watch some people go, ah, trying to put a wagon together for their toddler. So you're told to go to college. You can't get a good job without college. As soon as you get your degree, they stand there and look at you and go, well, too bad you don't have experience. Ah! It makes no sense. It's like calling the call center and you've got a complaint, your Comcast, your Xfinity isn't working. Oh, I'm really sorry. That can be really frustrating. Oh, stop it. I know you're supposed to say that. Fix my problem. I told her, I said, I know you can get in. Maybe you'll have to try somewhere else. I talked to a Hispanic lady yesterday on the hike. She's a paraprofessional. She said this week is her last week. It was just a temporary job. She goes, I never thought I'd realize this, but I'm actually sad that I'm leaving. But she said, she goes, I got an engineering degree, and she's going into, I can't even remember what it was. She told me, and it sounded like an utterly boring thing. And then I told her I had lived in Hong Kong because she said she lived in Mexico 10 years. And I said, how was that? And we were talking. She goes, why didn't you stay in Hong Kong? I said, I don't have a degree. And, I told her all that. And she said to me that I would love to go overseas. I said, you have a degree in engineering. You need to get on Asia Expat. You need to get on these international forums. I promise you, lady, that with your degree, there are some countries out there that would probably snap you up. If you really want to go overseas, you've got way more of a chance than Michael does. Really? I said, I would look into it. Part of life is passing on information to others that don't have it. The education system is quagmired in socialist, Democrat, liberal, anarchist, anti-God, anti-government, anti-constitution, anti-declaration of independence, anti-white male, anti-male agenda. It's drowning in it. And these kids are hearing the beat of the drum over and over, and I am going to tell you something that will shock my viewers. I am starting to believe that most white women in American society are mentally ill. I could give you case in point all day, every day, from the educators to the teachers to the women in their SUVs. I pull up at a corner. I'm trying to make a right turn. I go as far as I can. Blonde woman sits there and she just stares at the front of the bus. I don't honk. I don't do anything. She will not put it in reverse. She will not move. The dots aren't connected. If you back up 7-8 feet, I can get around the corner. There's nobody behind you. Doesn't register. And I've noticed a direct correlation to people who voted for Hillary Clinton and a huge deficit of common sense, a massive deficit of manners. And I'm going to say this, and if I had a public national television station, I would say this like the mosques' horns that go from all the mosques in Iran and Iraq. I would be blasting it at 2 o'clock every day. And I would say, you know what, ladies, pull your heads out of your butts. You want to vote Democrat, and I've said this, and people get mad. Anybody that voted for Hillary Clinton has a mental deficit. Why would you vote in a woman who believes in killing babies, murdering? Why would you vote in a woman who has stolen billions of dollars, her and her husband both, who are as corrupt as can be, and now they're talking about impeaching Trump, and I'm going, for what? Colluding with the Russians, and they have no proof. Even Nancy Pelosi, who's a devil in a woman's body, said, let's wait until this investigation of this other thing is over before we impeach or start impeachment proceedings. Nancy Pelosi actually telling her Democrat constituents to wait. Isn't that entertaining? Yeah, you might want to find a smoking gun first, morons. Democrats love to have a courtroom, and this is what's happening with all these sexual allegations. I am disappointed in Mr. Moore because he's probably not telling the truth. It's looking an awful lot like he did some inappropriate things as a 31-year-old man with a 14 and a 16-year-old girl. Well, that's a no-no, Mr. Moore. That's a no-no. But there's an awful lot of accusations being made, and it's interesting. There's a lot of accusations that are made about Hillary, and Hillary has gotten perturbed and irritated, and never mind that. But when some woman claims that a man touched her in the breast or in the butt, the Democrats and the media rush to a predetermined verdict, judged without a trial. That's not the American justice system as I know it. Not at all. The press crucifies people, but what are the kids actually learning? I watched a bunch of third graders, and I actually found myself going, thank you, God, that you're opening my eyes. I used to be like the teacher. Stop it. Don't do that. Stop it. Stop it. But. All the way through the hike. I mean, we stopped and stopped and stopped and stopped. And there's these big binoculars on the overlook. And he told the kids before we got off, don't play with them, don't touch them, they won't work. All you're going to see is black because you have to put money in them, and we don't have the money to put in them. And what do the kids do? They get off the bus and run and grab them and swing them around. And the minute you put a prohibition, they're going to do it. And Michael has learned to mellow out and really get used to kids. I have a black route. It's my second route of the day. Those kids like me. They get on, they fist bump me, hey, mister. And they're loud, but they're sitting down, they're behaving. And another driver covered my route. She goes, man, those kids are loud. I said, yeah, they talk loud, but they're not shrieking. Yeah, well, I don't put up with that. I'm thinking, you've been with this outfit for how long? And Michael's finally learning about cultural nuances. Leave them alone. If you don't want to be in a loud bus, don't drive a bus. I'm on a loud diesel. I hear traffic all day and noise. And these kids are talking and they're laughing and they're giggling and they're having fun and they're sitting in their seats. Carry on, kids. Be a damn kid. The third graders, if I'm on a hike, I would tell them, okay, we need to stay on the trail. A couple kids were picking up rocks and tossing them. I said, be careful with those. You don't want to hit somebody. And they got that. I said, you don't want to hit anybody. You need to be careful. You're flinging those, and you almost got me in the face. Watch the rocks. But telling them they can't pick up the pine cones and toss them, they're rotting. And there's 10,000 of them on both sides of the trail. I'm thinking, shoot, if I'd have been in this class, I would have gotten a hole. I would have taken my hoodie, stuffed them in there, and been tossing them everywhere. Education is failing. When the second group of kids got on my bus in the afternoon, they got on, and the one white woman and the Hispanic lady come on first. She was in Zacatecas, Mexico. She was a teacher of adults, and she said, it's hard to teach this grade. But she came on with her phone, and she was playing, hold on, I'm going to play you guys a song. And she played Despacito. So I grabbed the microphone in the bus. I held her cell phone up to it. She goes, oh, thank you. Despacito. All those kids came alive. And I joined in before the teacher came on the bus because he had gone for a walk and he didn't expect them out so early, so I entertained them. I want to say something, regardless of how we feel about this or that, we have to try to build a bridge. And I see a lot of people today don't do that in all ethnic groups. Black people sit with their black friends. Hispanic people sit with their Hispanic friends. Michael's a bridge builder. I'm like, I like the song Despacito. I'm going to go into this. I'm going to build a bridge. And the Hispanic lady talked to me on the hike. She was older. She's a mother of two. She was taking pictures of Buffalo Bill's grave. She was reading the Spanish and the English. She was very interested. And there are some people out there that are not these god-awful liberals that hate us. But sometimes white people tend to distance themselves from things they're not comfortable with. And I'm going to tell you, you'd better start changing that because the storm is coming. Denver's 58% Hispanic, and I do feel that there's a hostile takeover taking place, and I'm not wild about that. But it's white people who have allowed this to happen. They're the ones in the media generating the hate, the racism, and the walls. And white people need to kick and storm the gates of media hell and tell them, stop it. You need to bring things together and stop causing all this division and hate. Because when they get big, they're going to topple your asses out of your media thrones, and you're not going to be in charge. We're going to have Buena Vista TV running everything. That's good view, by the way, in Spanish. General Hospital will be replaced with General Drama, Hispanic style. And don't kid yourself, they have their soap operas too. My cousin's wife, who's from Peru, watches them all the time. Ay, Buena Vista TV. What are the kids learning? Not much. The teachers and administrators are trying to get control of the students, and they don't realize you took away that control when you said there's no God. Excuse me, you took away that control when you said there's no absolutes. And then we get as petty as scolding children for kicking pine cones. I understand that there has to be order and respect, but they're on a nature trail. To them, to these inner city kids, this is a playground. There were rocks and they start climbing on them. Get off of there. I told you not to climb on the rocks. I'm like, oh my gosh. You cannot take a third grader and make them a scientist who's walking around like a nerd with a little magnifying glass attached to his forehead going, okay, Mr. Peabody, it looks like elk tracks. I laughed. We saw some elk scat. For those of you out of the country, scat is another word for poo-poo. And the teacher says, so what do you think this is, kids? What do you think this is? And one kid says, caca. I started laughing. The other kids started laughing. No, we don't say that. We say scat. And the kid looks right at me and he goes, and I went, why are we scolding kids for being kids? They are interested, but you can cause them to lose their interest by constantly scolding them for being what they are. Education has tried to homogenize and streamline everybody into the same rotten, nasty box, and it's not working. It's not working. And I look at Hispanic kids and how much are they retention. You know, you get summer break. Kids don't pay attention to math and history and English when they're out on summer break. If we don't teach kids that in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth, we are in deep doo-doo, or as the Mexicans would say, caca. That education, the kids are learning more. Those kids all knew the words in Spanish of Despacito and were singing it beautifully. We are learning more via pop culture than we are in a classroom. Pop culture and media culture has become our educators. And when I say educators, I'm not saying we're getting an education that matters. We're getting a feelings-based, emotionally driven logic education through the media, which is having way more pull and way more effect on textbook, boring drivel about a male and a female pine cone. The bottom line is, we've done this to ourselves. The church in America is doing the same darn thing. People are no longer interested in the dry, boring, King James Version only, Word of God. I'm not a KJV only advocate. They want entertainment at worship. They want electric guitars. They want people with tattoos. They want people to entertain them. And the Word of God has little value even in Christian culture. That we've raised a generation of stuck-up, self-righteous women that say, I want a godly man. You don't even know what godly is, woman, because you're not godly. You are saved, but you're a spiritual infant. And this is what we're up against. We have been Pied Pipered away from logic and common sense and actually getting excited about discovery. And now, the discovery of today, and it's even had an effect on Michael speaking to you. We're titillated by those things that aren't right. So, in a sense, the kids are not getting educated in the public system. We're doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results, and that's the definition of insanity, according to Einstein. This is specific. I must go to work, but this is for you. Education must start with God in the beginning. Education must start with an awareness that children are children, and at different ages this is what they're going to do, and our education needs to be tailored to the fact that third graders are going to shuffle their feet, they're going to play with their zippers. He was commenting on everything. Stop playing with your jacket, stop reaching into your backpack, stop grabbing this. These are third graders. How many of you, my viewers, wanted to hear all the details about a pine cone and a pine needle when you were in third grade? Can I see a show of hands? That's what I thought. Nobody. Boring. I mean, I grew up in the mountains. I paid no attention to pine needles except when I was climbing the tree and they poked me in the face and all over my arms, and I got sap all over me. With Michael, I got interested in education after the fact. When I went to China, then I wish I'd have paid attention to China history and social studies, but I didn't care back then. It had no relevance. And that is when education becomes valuable, is when you want it. But you have to own it. When I lived in China, now I'd like to know about the Ming Dynasty. Now I'd like to know what happened. Not all the boring, dry details, but an overview. You're taking inner city kids. And they all came up to me, Mister, look at the back of the stop sign that we just walked by. It says TV Monster. Somebody had spray painted TV Monster on the back of the stop sign. Kids were all talking about it, and the teacher looks at me and she goes, yep, you can tell they're inner city. They don't notice any of this, but they notice the graffiti. And I thought, yeah, why wouldn't they? Why wouldn't they? And I laughed. I said, TV Monster. And I started laughing. I said, TV Monster. And they all started laughing. Mister, how old are you? I said, 51. They said, you're cool. You can educate, but scoldicating doesn't work. It just doesn't. And I learned that. There's a way to say, hey, you need to stop doing this because that's not right. But scolding them for every little thing and being a third grader and being a kid full of energy and exuberance, oh my gosh, I cannot believe that. These kids aren't learning anything at all. What they're learning is a way of life that they don't want to imitate or emulate. But then when they hear the song Despacito, up go the hands, up goes the body rhythm, boom, they've just been educated right out into pop culture. Something to think about, folks. This is Pacific signing off. Have a great day.